Let's see. Come on, dude.
Oh man, how's it going?
Another day, man.
Another day of paradise.
Welcome to Latino Talk TV. I'm your host, Ben Mendez, joined by my co-host, Mr. Javier Perez. And today we're going to talk politics. And we have none other than Mr. Hector De Leon from Harris County. He's our political strategist, and I will tell you he has some great information about the elections. But before we get into the election, I want to give my hats off to the Rockets. Houston Rockets finally won a couple games. Finally 500%.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can continue that. But what are your thoughts on the Houston Rockets?
Man, you know, they kind of got to 500 quietly.
Quietly,
you know,
exactly.
So I hopefully, man, I got to tell you.
Yeah. Well, they did spank the Lakers.
Yeah. But so is everybody.
That's not saying a lot, right? The Lakers are probably one of the worst teams in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that The team that I am very proud of right now is the Houston Cougars.
Yeah.
Houston Cougars are doing some excellent work. They're playing football in, what is it, the Peach Bowl, or what's it called?
Peach Bowl.
The Peach Bowl?
The Peach Bowl.
It'll be December 31st against Florida State. Now,
That'll be a great game.
Now, if they can beat Florida State,
You know, they could beat, if they could beat Florida State, holy smokes, I tell you.
Yeah, and maybe the Texans can get some pointers from.
Now, they say
Cougars.
it's been 30 years since they've been in a major bowl. They've been in bowl, but not in a major one.
If y'all were real Cougars, you would say when they beat Florida State.
Okay, when they beat Florida State. Remember that. But
remember, because the reason I bring it up is because the last time they were in a major bowl was probably the Cotton Bowl when they played against Notre Dame and Joe Montana. Joe Montana had that big comeback. You know.
Well, we do have some Longhorns, and as in the producer's little quiet office over there, some Longhorns, and I don't know how well they did, but did they get invited to a bowl, Enrique? They did not get invited to a bowl.
I don't think so. They were what?
So
5 and 6.
So are you telling me
like
Houston Cougars is Texas team, Enrique?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know, and my hat's off to the coach also. First year coach to do what he did with these young men. That's a great story.
And by the way, my good friend Hector here went to U of H. Unfortunately, Javier did not get the pleasure of going to U of H.
Actually, I did go to U of H, but
You
it was
did?
just kind of en route to another school.
So let's talk politics. As you know, we had the mayor's race, city council races, HISD races this past Saturday, and a runoff election here in the city of Houston. And we have a new mayor. Sylvester Turner squeaked by, literally. How many votes did Sylvester win by?
Well, in Harris County, in the precincts, in Harris County, he won by 678 votes. And in Fort Bend County, he received about 93, 94, maybe higher percent of the vote, which was total. He won by 3,451 votes. So,
Wow.
Combined, I think he won by 4,100 votes or so.
Incredible. Okay. So what they showed on TV was not accurate then. What you're telling me is the city of Houston proper, they had 600 plus votes in favor of Sylvester.
Right. There's, the city of Houston goes into Fort Bend, and it goes
Okay.
also into Montgomery County. So there are about 21,000 voters that are registered to vote in Fort Bend County that are part of the city. So I think they had like an 18% turnout, and about 4,000 people voted, 4,000 more.
So the numbers that they were showing on the bottom of the screen when you were watching TV at 10 p.m. at night, those were inaccurate numbers.
No, they're probably accurate if they total up all the votes in the
They were
city,
not.
in Harris County, Fort Bend County.
It didn't appear.
Montgomery County.
It didn't appear they were doing so. Because
How so, Ben?
there was a spread of about 607 votes on TV between the two, Bill King and Sylvester Turner. And so what he's telling me is you have the city of Houston proper, and then you have the Fort Bend County, right? Fort Bend County has their own precincts within the city of Houston.
And are those historically, Hector? Do those boxes come in late?
No, because they don't. In elections, in the Harris County, when we conduct an election, we conduct it for the city of Houston. They contract the county to conduct its election. The city of Houston also contracts Fort Bend County elections to conduct their election in Fort Bend County. Mm-hmm. So we are only accountable for and responsible for the voting precincts that are in Harris County. So, and in this instance, because there's a few voters in Montgomery County, it was arranged for Montgomery County voters to vote in certain precincts inside the county. They just have to cross, over a little bit.
I've always enjoyed to talk politics when Hector is doing his analysis before the election. And one of the things that Hector had told me, he says, the majority of people within the city of Houston are Democrat. And what is it, a 40, 60, or 45,
Average,
55
probably
split?
At the high end, it could be like 58, 42, 59, 41, even maybe 60, 40.
Okay, so pretty close to 20% split.
At the low end, and it depends who the candidate is.
Yeah.
For example, you can mention that if you like. in the 2014 midterm election, inside the city, in precincts that are inside the city of Houston within Harris County, every Democratic candidate won inside the city of Houston, but they lost the election countywide.
You understand that?
Yep.
City of Houston precincts are mostly Democrat.
The most popular Republican in Harris County, which is our county judge, Emmett, when you look at the total number of votes cast in his contest, he didn't have a Democratic opponent or an opponent from the Democratic Party. But anyway, he received 49% of the vote when he tallied up all the votes cast within the city of Houston. The other category, which was the third-party candidates and the undervote, total 51%. So even the most popular Republican did not get over 50% of the vote within the city of Houston. So the least popular Republican candidate, which was in the lieutenant governor's race, received 39% of the vote within the city of Houston. So you see the range that it goes. It could be 61-39 or it could be 51-49, but it's never
50-50.
50 plus, which is what you need to be able to win the election.
Ted Cruz received 44% of the vote when he ran in the city of Houston.
The midterm.
In the city of Houston.
And you're talking about midterms, right? Yeah.
Last year, 2014 midterm
Yeah.
elections.
So, and 52% voted for the Democrat. Wow. So he would have lost the election.
No, it was John Cornyn. John Cornyn
Was
the
it John
one that was
Cornyn?
on the ballot.
Okay.
John Cornyn and somebody named Alil or somebody, I forgot. I don't know. He was somebody who really wasn't well known.
Okay.
And although despite the fact that he wasn't well known, he still received 52% of the vote within the city of Houston.
Wow. So no-namer beat Cornyn in the city of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. How about that? So we have a big surprise. We had some elections at the city level, city council level. Roy Morales, I think he was 30-something% when he ran for city council at large against Amanda Edwards, right? Amanda Edwards had 60-something%. Now that's a 2-to-1 split there. Honestly, I thought Roy would do a lot better, simply because he had a big push of Republicans and the Hispanic surname. I thought he would get more votes, but obviously that didn't happen.
Well, my sense is that, for example, people ask, what was the Hispanic vote? Well, I heard the narrative that some people were pushing that the Latino candidate did not make the runoff because Hispanics didn't vote on November 3rd. And
Talking about Adrian Garcia.
And I'll just call him the Hispanic candidate.
Okay.
The fact is that in every election in 2009, 2011, and 2013, Hispanics averaged about, on the low end, 7% of the total vote that was cast in those elections, and maximum about 9%. In this election,
Now you're talking about just votes that were actually cast.
Yeah, votes that were cast. The Hispanics comprised between 7 and 9% of the voters in those years. In 2015, on November 3rd, the Hispanic vote was minimum 12%, maximum 15%. So there was a jump about 3 points. It's actually those numbers you only see in presidential elections. What people need to understand is that people always talk about the Hispanic vote and they always focus on population. Hispanics are 44% of the population within the city of Houston. But when you actually look at census data and ask how much of that is the citizen voting age population, what do Hispanics constitute in the city of Houston as far as citizen voting age population? And that number is about 26%. So the number that people need to be looking at is 26%, not 44%. So then the next question is, what is the electorate, the Hispanic electorate within the city of Houston? When you look at Spanish surname queries, what is the estimated number of Hispanics registered to vote within the city of Houston? The answer is now, I looked at the last one, minimum 18%, maximum 21%. So that means if Hispanics, if we were to look at the high end, 21%, and then we say, well, the citizen voting age population is 26%. If Hispanics were fully registered to vote inside the city, that means we were only 5 percentage points short of being fully registered to vote within the city. So that's what we're looking at. And obviously at this point, non-Hispanic whites are still the biggest percent of the registered voters within the city, then African Americans, and then Hispanics. So when I always hear people saying the sleeping giant, that somehow
We hear that all the time.
overnight, that overnight Hispanics are going to be the largest voting group in the city, and that's misleading. That's not true. The citizen voting age population says Hispanics are 26% of the citizen voting age population. That means that if every major voting group was fully registered to vote, overnight everybody had 100% registration, Hispanics would be 26% of the registered voters within the city. They wouldn't be the biggest. Whites would still be the biggest group, blacks, and then Hispanics. So anybody, I always say this, and I might offend some people, but I always say anybody that ever says sleeping giant in reference to the Hispanic political power doesn't know what they're talking about.
So, Hector, in layman's terms, I guess, how much of an actual impact do Hispanics actually have, percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise, if you were to say Hispanics constituted 15% of the voters on November 3rd, that is significant. It is significant because previously it wasn't even, beyond 7% in previous years. Or you go back to the 90s, the population was big, but the Hispanic vote was emerging. But most people focus in on the population, and people are always talking about impact, because it's a game of perception.
Mm-hmm.
People that leadership and even nonprofit organizations or civic engagement organizations is a game of perception, that they want other people to feel that Hispanics actually have a lot of clout, or the clout is consistent or equal to their population, and that's just not so. Now it's growing. It's growing. In 1996, Hispanics comprised about 51,000 of the voters in the presidential election. 51,000. In 2012, if you look at conservatively, Hispanics constituted 150,000. So in that span from 1996 to 2012, there's been a growth of 100,000 voters, and it's continuing to grow. Now, when you look at, and I'm talking about when we say conservatively and then more liberally, what is used to gather the data is that there's a report that was provided by the census, produced by the census in 1996, it has a glossary of what is called the most common Hispanic surnames, and there are only 639. So when you do a query using those 639 names, it produces, for the November 3rd election, that Hispanics constituted 12.5% of the voters.
Mm-hmm.
But when you use another census glossary, which is bigger, it's over 12,000 names. 12,000 names of people who said they were Hispanic in the census, in the last census. And when you use that number of names, it produces a total that Hispanics were 15% of the voters. So I explained that so people will know what I'm talking about. So if we were to say 15% of the voters, and at that point when I did the analysis,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanics constituted about 19%, more or less, of the registered voters in the city of Houston. If we produced 15% of the vote and we were only 19% of the registered voters in the city, that's not too far off. We almost lived up to the
average.
to the number. But people don't know these numbers.
So why don't we promote them?
Well, that's why I'm here. I'm trying to
But hey, how
educate.
are we getting just this bad information? How is that being disseminated where Hispanics think
Well,
they are more than what
my
they
feeling
really
is
are?
that people really are not asking the right questions, and in the efforts to engage the public, in the messages that are disseminated are not as concise as they need to be. I used to work for a nonprofit for over a decade, and we spent, when we first started, 1990, we didn't know. We just saw population. We didn't know. This is something you learn as you go. You get educated. You figure out how to do certain things. So I've gotten to the point where I started asking the right questions because nobody else was asking those questions. There's really never a focus to figure out where we are. So then, if we know, the reason it's important to know these numbers is because if you're running a civic education campaign to try to engage more Hispanics to vote, you need to know where we are now and what the possibility is, what the maximum possibility or what the potential is. So at this point, if we were asked, what is the potential of the Hispanic vote? Well, 26%. If we can get Hispanics to be 26% of the registered voters inside the city of Houston, then we've achieved the goal. If we do it for the county, which I think is a little less county-wide, then we've achieved the goal. And we need to know what the goal is to be able to achieve it and not keep talking about population. We're 44% of the population in the city. We're 42% of the population in the county.
So say we're 42% of the
44.
population. How many actual, as far as people eligible to vote, do we actually, what's the true number that we're looking at?
When I did an analysis, county-wide, I believe it was like 600 and the 650,000 range. There's 1.6 million Hispanics, pushing upwards to 1.7 Hispanics in the county, and the number of people that are actually eligible to register to vote is about 650,000. That's the number. And if we have 370,000 people registered to vote, that means that only about half, a little bit above half, in fact, I did the number, 52% of the population that was eligible to vote is estimated to be registered to vote. So there's potential for growth. Hispanics have the biggest potential for growth, but we need to know what those numbers are. We can't continue to focus on population because every time you do that, when after an election, when Hispanics don't achieve 44% of the vote, people are disappointed and disenchanted, and then there's people pushing narratives, Hispanics don't vote, when in reality, Hispanics do vote. We don't vote, we underperform, but the vote is growing.
Yeah.
So we have some good news today. Actually, it was a flash on Channel 13. Adrian Garcia is running against Gene Green. Filed today.
Oh, you're kidding me. I did not know that. Hector, did you know that?
I didn't know that until I just read it. But I have looked at Congressional District 29, and if you, again, using those queries, 49% of the registered voters are Hispanic, minimum, and maximum about 56% of the registered voters in that district are Hispanic. So it was drawn up in 1992 as a Hispanic Opportunity District. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
So if Gene Green has Adrian Garcia running against him, and you have Hillary in the Democratic side. And then you have, of course, everybody else running. There's going to be a lot of movement in March for the Democratic primary election.
You know, Adrian has really benefited from good, strong Democratic candidates that are running in Harris County.
At the top of the ballot.
At top of the ballot, exactly. I mean, some would say, I mean, it was a big hype that, oh, you know, he was a top vote getter, you know, in the country, but that was only because he was running during the presidential year. He wouldn't have, you know, like it shows, you know, this wasn't a presidential year, and he came in a distant third.
So this is going to be the interesting thing. As you know, the state representatives all supported Sylvester Turner during the mayor's race from the very get-go, okay? Now, my bet is those state representatives, the very same Latinos that supported Sylvester, are going to support Gene Green.
Gene's been there a long time.
I think that's going to be very interesting, you know, because the lines were drawn, the mayor's race. The elected officials did not support Adrian, but the community, I'm talking about the Hispanic community, supported Adrian big time. If you look at the numbers, I think it was like 82% or something. So you can tell me more so about this. What percentage of Latinos support Adrian in the mayor's race?
Well, I haven't really looked at that closely, but I imagine that the number you mentioned is not far off.
Is
probably from about 75% to maybe a little.
So the number that I heard was 82%. Now, 82% Latinos supporting Adrian, not to mention all the others that would support Adrian. It's going to be a tough race for Gene Green. I don't care what anybody says. He can have all the money in the world. It's going to be a tough race.
What are the actual numbers of that district now? Hector, do you have any idea?
Well, I think I just mentioned that Hispanics constitute between 49% to 55% of the registered voters in that district.
Actual registered voters. We're not talking about population. Actual registered voters.
Actual registered voters.
Yeah. So
and that number's been growing since that district was.
It's probably at its highest right now.
Yeah.
And the example I would provide is that when you look at primary voting for Spanish surname voters, when there's really not much happening in a primary, or there's really nothing compelling to get people out to vote, there are just as many Spanish surname voters participating in the Republican primary as they are in the Democratic primary, which is not very many, but the numbers are about equal, which tells you that there's about an equal number of hardcore Republicans and an equal number of hardcore Democrats. Everybody else is like, they have to have something to compel them to go vote. Now, I will tell you, the election where Hispanics voted the highest numbers was in 2008 in a primary, because normally Spanish surname voters do not vote
in primaries.
Yeah. But in 2008, because of the excitement that was caused by the battle between Clinton and Obama for the Democratic presidential nomination, you had a historic record of Spanish surname voters participating. And the example is in the district, which is up north, 140, State Representative District 140, that was represented by a non-Hispanic for years. And he would always win with the same number of votes because nobody came out to vote except his regular voters. Well, a Hispanic ran against them. And the tsunami that was caused by the battle between Clinton and Obama wiped them out on election day in the March primary. The Hispanic won going away. I think he received over 60% of the vote. There's a possibility that if the same kind of excitement is generated this time around, the same thing will happen, and maybe it will happen at a higher level office. So,
you know, the other interesting thing is that Adrian supported Sylvester Turner in the runoff, okay? Now, will Sylvester Turner return the favor if he runs against Gene Green? Now, that's going to be something.
That's going to be interesting, Ben.
Yeah. What percentage is African American in that district?
I have to look at it, but
About 5%?
I think it's been growing a bit. We've seen that in the last census that the growth in the black community has not been in the traditional black areas.
It's mixed.
It's been spreading out throughout the city and throughout the county. In fact, the biggest growth you've seen of African American voters has been outside the city of Houston.
So how are you determining which voters are white and which voters are black if they don't specify an ethnic group when they register to vote?
Well, I can't explain the whole thing here, but actually I have a website where I created a report for the city, not for the city, but about the city election, which was called Houston Electorate Profile, which explains to you how you more or less gauge it. You take, for Spanish surnames, obviously we use the Spanish surnames
Right.
to more or less estimate the number of Hispanics. And you can do that for Asians too.
Sure.
So when you look at that's a lot easier to do. The other is a lot harder, but you can take census data, population data, you can take citizenship data, and you can take other
Driver's license?
no, you
You
can't
can't do that?
No,
No?
I'm talking about just census data.
Just estimating.
You're estimating.
Okay.
The citizen, I can't explain it to you right now, but I have these reports that I produced pertaining to population, voting age population, citizen voting age population, and it gives you the numbers for every major group in Harris County and what the numbers are within the city. I think the estimate was that African Americans constitute 31% of the citizen voting age population inside the city of Houston. So when you look at that number, you gauge, well, most, I think it may be a little more, I forget, but you can guess that most African Americans are U.S. born citizens. And the registration number should equal more or less their citizen voting age population. If it's, I can't.
So it's a lot of math. And math is your worst subject.
Yeah, but that, I mean, it's the census puts it out. Citizen voting age population.
Yeah.
It's more or less when they tell you the Anglos or white citizen voting age population is a certain number, you can guess because they have the highest percentage of registered voters.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some.
So we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about upcoming races. The presidential race I really want to discuss, and of course the congressional and the state rep races that are local to Houston. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Latino Talk TV. I'm your host, Ben Mendez, joined by Mr. Javier Perez, my co-host. And we're talking to Mr. Hector De Leon, our political analyst for Harris County. And I will tell you, it's been very interesting in digesting some of these numbers. Now, let's talk about this presidential race. Now, you had mentioned that Harris County, there's a bunch of Republicans, majority Republicans with it, and when you look at the city proper, which is part of Harris County, it's majority Democrat. So at large, Harris County, it's almost impossible for a Democrat to win unless they are really good at reaching out to the Republican Party. So your
Well,
thoughts?
actually, well, before I say anything about that, I want to I want to say that I'm actually Director of Communications for the Harris County Clerk's Office, and if people want to know more or less what took place during the election staff, under the guidance of the county clerk Stan Stannard, actually he asked for the election staff to have the precinct by precinct report up by today. The election was Saturday, and they stayed overnight to produce a heat map of the vote county citywide within Harris County, and the precinct by precinct report, which shows you how people, unofficial precinct by precinct report. So people can actually go to harrisvotes.com and go to election results, Harris County, and you'll see a map. And you'll see, you can download the Excel sheet for precinct by precinct results for every contest that was on the ballot. And that's
quick.
never been done. That's the fastest.
That's quick.
And they stayed overnight. I saw when I left, they were still there. They stayed overnight to do that. And I thought, man, that's when people say, well, you know, because there's a lot of people who are partisan and they're always trying to find something.
Yeah.
But the election went well. We had all the votes counted by 10:24, I believe, 10:24 p.m., which is pretty fast. And the actual
fast,
official
Hector.
report was up. It might have been up by Sunday. Anyway, they can get all the information. If they want to know what happened, they can look at the Excel spreadsheet. It's called the precinct by precinct landscape. So it's available at harrisvotes.com.
So let's talk about this presidential race. So we have obviously Hillary running on the Democratic side, and then you have probably 10 candidates left on the Republican side. So what kind of numbers are you expecting on the primary as far as number of voters turning out?
Well, for most primaries, it's usually what compels people to go to to vote is usually what's on the ballot. For example, the last two election cycles in the presidential year, there haven't been, well, in 2008 there was, but in 2012 there wasn't anything happening on the Democratic side because there was an incumbent. So when there's an open race, that's when it generates more excitement.
Sure.
And more people come out to vote. So you had that for the Republican primary.
Okay.
And so you would expect now this year, when it's open on both parties, that it may be similar to what it was in 2008, that there will be more people participating in a primary in both the Democratic primary and the Republican primary. So we expect that, and our job is to help the parties. A lot of people don't know that the parties actually are responsible for conducting their elections, for preparing, and we provide them support. But the number of precincts polling locations that they will have on election day, and the number of people they will have working on election day, and where those polling locations are situated, those decisions are made by the chair and their executive committee for each party. The county clerk's office may provide some advice saying, well, this is how it's happened in the past. These are the list of polling locations that were utilized previously, and we provide support and to each party but in the end, it is the parties who are responsible for the conduct of their election. So if for some reason people complain, how come my poll is over here? Call your party headquarters or the party that you participate. They are responsible. Don't know
And
that
they're
we
under, yeah.
really are only there to support them, and those decisions are made by the political parties. But as like always, because we are the election office, people always lay all issues are placed on the doorstep of the elections office. And
I tell you, Hector, and you being your communications director for the county, you must get every complaint that comes
we get
across.
the complaint, I think we were talking about the biggest complaint in this election was that people were adamant that they lived in Houston and they wanted to vote.
Yeah.
And so we look them up. Well, the address says Houston, but according to the address where they're registered to vote, based on the voter registrar's records, they don't live within the legal boundaries of the incorporated city of Houston. So you show up at a poll, and the election clerk there, they will qualify you to vote if you're on the poll book. And if you are like, I want to vote, and then you intimidate them into letting you vote a regular ballot, then the likelihood is you're going to be your record is going to be sent to the county, to district attorney's office at the end of the election because you have voted illegally in an election that you are not qualified to vote. And the clerk, you may get the clerk in trouble too, the election clerk at the poll in trouble because they knowingly allowed a person who was not qualified to vote. So in Harris County, there's about over 800,000 people that live in unincorporated areas. That means that their address could be Katy, could be Houston. In Houston, there are about 387,000 people who live in unincorporated areas that are called Houston, but are not within the city of Houston.
You know, I was a precinct judge for about 15 years, and I would always get that, especially the major elections, where, well, I want to vote for so-and-so. Well, sir, you don't live in that district. Yeah, but I want to vote for who I want to vote for. And you try to explain it to him and say, well, sir, I said, well, what can I do? Move there, and then you could vote for them all you want.
In this instance, well, again, people, they want to engage you, and they fight, and they want you to resolve the issue immediately, and they want to make you responsible for them not living in the city of Houston.
Oh, yeah.
So
well, why can't I vote for who I want to vote for? I used to hear that all the time.
So, again, what number, can you give me a specific number that you think we're going to hit as far as number of voters in the primary election?
In a solid turnout is like 400,000.
Okay.
400,000 in each side. 400 or 600,000 in each side.
So are you telling me there's going to be 900,000 people voting on the primary?
I think we had that in the 2008, and I have to look at the numbers, but a solid turnout is probably be within 450,000, more or less.
For the Democrats and the Republicans?
For both sides, but usually the
not
tendency,
combined. You're talking about individually.
Individually.
Incredible.
That's amazing. That's an amazing
The
number.
turnout, regardless of what's on the ballot, usually is stronger in the Republican primary, usually. But there's some primaries where we only have 100,000 plus voters. In this one, we have 2 million registered voters. And the average turnout, the turnout for the 2012 election was about 1,288,000, I believe. And then the turnout in 2008, it was 1.1 something. So usually you have over 1 million voters participating in an election in November. So for 600,000 voters to participate together in a primary, that's actually pretty good. It's so.
Okay. So in the runoff, obviously, there's going to be drop off. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of numbers you get, Democratic and Republican side in the runoff. Now, what percentage do you think is a drop off in the runoff election?
Normally, it's very low. In fact, the parties, the way they address, which causes an uproar within the electorate, is that they reduce even the number of polling locations even more during a primary runoff.
Yeah.
So I would say the way to gauge it is basically go to harrisvotes.com and look at the election results and election archives, and go to every primary election and then look at the primary runoffs, and then more or less you can expect that. You see that. Again, this time we really don't know what to expect, because there's a lot of excitement being generated on the Republican side.
Right.
And so we don't know what to expect, but we know it's going to be a strong.
Well, Hector, when is the primary?
March 1st.
March 1st. And is that the same day as Super Tuesday?
I think that is.
I think it is. So there's going to be a lot of states that are having their primaries on that day. I think, 13?
So
I got 13.
So we're going to have
14,
Enrique run for state representative.
I'd vote for him. I'd vote for Enrique.
So one of the things that caught my attention today, because I was reading CNN, and they were talking about head-to-head competition.
Mm-hmm.
If Trump ran against Hillary, Hillary would win. If Ted Cruz ran against Hillary, Hillary would win. If Senator Rubio from Florida ran against Hillary, Rubio would win.
That's amazing.
And you know why?
Why?
Because he's more moderate. He's not too far to the right. And so those independent voters, the ones that are in the middle, some of them would go to Rubio.
No. I saw the poll where it said that he would get like 39% of the vote, and I think Hillary about 56% of the Hispanic vote. My sense is, and you see that it doesn't equal to 100%, right? But my sense is that regardless, there's always, remember we were talking about the hardcore participants in either election, they're about equal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Harris County, you have about the equal number of hardcore Democrats and hardcore Republicans. And so in a November election, if you actually had a ticket, imagine having a ticket with Cruz and Rubio, either one or the other leading the ticket. When you actually think about that, whatever your politics,
Mm-hmm.
You're either on the left or the right. I'm not even talking about in those terms. I'm talking about in the terms that you would have somebody named Cruz and somebody named Rubio leading the Republican ticket for the presidency of the United States. Two Hispanics. That, when you think about it, most people don't, because the people that mostly speak about these sort of things are hardcore partisans on the left. So I don't think they even want to think about it. but if what you're talking about actually happens with Rubio leading the ticket, it's historic. It would be historic. And in part is because for a long time, Hispanics have been, when it comes to election day, by habit, they vote Democrat.
Yeah, they'd be confused.
No, exactly.
So let's talk about this even further. One of the things they were talking about in CNN was that the Republican Party is trying to find a way not to have Trump as their front runner. Okay, ironically, today his polling numbers show him at 41%, which is the highest that he's ever been. He's at the highest rating. Okay, now I would have thought that he would have been derailed a long time ago because of all the nonsense, all the things that he has said, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
He's constantly talking, and he says things that are just off the wall. But for the Republican Party, 41% of them, to say they're going to vote for Trump, regardless of what he did, or regardless of the way he thinks. That's scary. That's very scary. You know, they're far, far to the right, 41%. Now, let's just say Trump.
Any idea on how he's doing in Texas?
I don't know.
In Texas?
I don't know. But let's just say Trump is a smart guy. And if he sees that Rubio can beat Hillary one-on-one, well, shoot, Trump's going to make him his partner. He's going to be the VP.
That's right.
Right? His running mate. So if you have Trump and you have Rubio, now Rubio's more to the left than Mr. Trump is, right? So you're going to have an independent.
Rubio's more toward the center.
More towards the center.
Right.
Yeah, and Trump is far, far left.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Far right.
I'm getting my directions here mixed up.
Your other right.
Yeah, my other right. Now, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in that race.
Yeah.
Now, let's just say, I'm just throwing this out, Hillary decides to put a Latino as a running mate. Let's just say Castro, okay? Joaquin Castro or Julian Castro, whichever one she selects, right? So you're going to have a Republican with VP running mate that's Latino, and you're going to have a Democrat VP running mate that's Latino. Now what's going to happen?
Holy smokes.
No.
Have you thought about that?
That could leave some amazing options there. What do you think about that, Hector?
But when you actually think about it, it goes to what's happened in the past, that people vote for whoever leads the ticket. They don't vote for the person who's second in the ticket.
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't know about that. I beg to differ. If you have one Latino, if you don't have one on the Democrat and you have one on the Republican, let's just say it's Senator Rubio, I bet there's going to be some Latinos that are going to be like, you know what? I'm going to vote for Rubio. I don't care about Trump. I'm going to vote for Rubio.
possibly that could happen. That could happen.
When have we had a Latino as a running mate? Never.
Mm-hmm.
This will be history making. I'm just throwing this out.
And,
okay?
and when it happens, it could be a pair. You could have one on the Democratic side. One on the
I
Republican
was
side.
actually, in fact, I've thought about this, and you know, the way we're talking, people are going to say, "Oh, these people are all on the right."
Yeah.
I will say, just to say, my wife is the presiding election judge for the Democratic Party. Doesn't mean that one is one or the other. I'm basically beyond politics, beyond partisanship. But
You're nonpartisan. You're vegetarian.
I worked for a nonprofit for over 15 years.
Yeah.
And now I work in a nonprofit capacity. So,
Okay.
So anyway, professionally, I've always stayed above the partisan noise. But you're right. You do have to look at it in this way, that for a long time, Hispanics have had tendencies and habits because they think, oh, Republicans are for the rich, and so I'm not rich, so I got to vote for the party of the poor, and so they cast their ballot with the Democratic Party. But then you wonder, how come there aren't any leadership, at the statewide level, any Hispanics?
Yeah.
And how come at the national level or governors on the Democratic side? And you wonder, when you actually think about it, you say, well, why is it everybody's over here on the Republican side? And gives you food for thought.
Well, I am happy that Bernie Aldape is running for state rep for district, what is it, 144?
I think it's 142, isn't it?
I think it's 144. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, okay.
Pasadena area, Southeast. He's one of our NHPO members from the National Hispanic Professional Organization. Now, I'm very glad he's running. Now, we have a Republican that's currently in that seat.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Pena is the state representative. So Bernie Aldape, obviously, there's going to be a primary, so he's going to run as a Democrat against other Democrats. So he has a ways to go, but we are 100% behind him. Now, I will tell you this also, that
You are 100% behind.
Well, I am 100%,
Okay.
not the station. I am 100%
Or the
behind him.
guest.
And so is Javier.
I think Bernie's a good man.
So
I don't know him, so.
So
Take my word for it, Hector. He's a good man.
So Bernie Sanders. Oh,
I
don't know where
was
that came
wondering.
from, man.
We get folks. We get messages over the intercom, and our producer Enrique just asked, "What about Bernie?" So I thought we were talking about Bernie Aldafe, and he's talking about Bernie Sanders.
So this is another scenario. So we have obviously a governor that is going to be there for a couple years. Now, would it be possible for, let's say, a Julian Castro to win the governorship in the next couple years?
This is just based on the numbers.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with left or right or party or this.
Right.
The answer is no.
Okay.
The answer is no. At this point, the numbers are not there.
So Wendy Davis, her battle for governor is an indicator of what would happen to any Democrat running against a Republican.
Well, at this point, again, part of the reason that folks talk of every time Hispanic is running, they got to go to the Valley. They go to the Valley for some reason, or they go to San Antonio, and the fact is that there may be more Hispanics registered to vote in Harris County than in several of those counties in the Valley put together.
No, and I would agree with that.
It's so there's always my sense is that the Hispanic vote statewide is always the folks that talk about it. It's always overstated. It's always overstated, and the same thing that happens. What we were just talking about, that when the after every election, when the numbers are not there, then people talk about, well, what happened? You know, at this point, Hispanics there is growing. The Hispanic vote is growing, and it's at the highest levels that it has ever been. It's growing. It's having an impact, but we still have not achieved 100% voter registration of the folks who are citizens, and it's actually having an impact. In fact, my feeling is that, okay, I'll give you the example. In 2008, there were several county-wide offices on the ballot, and 3 of them, I believe, were won by, maybe 2 were won by Republicans and 3 by Democrats. The big Obama, people don't know, but Obama won Harris County in 2008 and 2012. So in 2008, he pulled people over the finish line, some Democrats at the county-wide level. But there were the district attorney's office, the tax assessor collector's office, and the county judge's office. They won. They won. The Republicans won. Do you know why they won? Because they hit the right number of Hispanic support. So they had a combination of their traditional conservative base plus about 29 or 30% of the Hispanic vote. That combination,
that's the deadly combo for Harris County.
They won. Wow. So Hispanics are having an impact on elections. Sometimes that is not stated or written about, because sometimes there's a mentality in the mainstream communications entities that if for some reason Democrats are not winning, that must be that Hispanics are not voting. But in reality, Hispanics are voting. It's just that Hispanics are not as monolithic as other groups in that vote Democrat.
I can see that. You know, with the African American community, you can pretty much assure they're going to vote Democrat. And the Hispanic community is more like 2-to-1, Democrat to Republican, 2-to-1. And the white community, what is it? What percentage is Republican? What percentage is Democrat?
Well, when you look at straight party voting, you can see that in 2008, 79% of the people that voted in state representative districts that are represented by blacks, 79% voted straight party. Straight party. When you look at the 79% and then ask, well, how did they vote? 98% voted straight party Democrat.
Interesting.
And when you look at white
Yep.
SRDs, and you say, well, how did they vote? Well, about, I think it was 46 or 56%, 46 or 56% voted straight. I think it was 56 voted straight party. And of the 56%, 74, 75% voted straight ticket Republican. Then you look at Hispanics. About 64% of Hispanics voted straight ticket. But when you look at to see what party they voted for, 69% voted straight party Democrat. The other voted straight party Republican. So what that tells you is when you actually look at, if you go by those numbers, you would say that Hispanics tend to be the least partisan voters of all the major groups.
Sure.
But people don't know that.
Yeah.
People just perpetuate certain stereotypes and certain notions that exist out there, but nobody ever corrects them.
That's interesting. You know, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. We have run out of time. Thank you for your time, Hector.
Thank you.
Javier, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next
Always
week.
interesting.
Live television every Monday night, 6
Christmas
p.m.
show. Christmas show next week.
6 p.m. We'll see you next week. I think we're up.